Hey, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a few weeks since I've had a chance to do this, so it's really good to get back online. I appreciate you taking a few minutes with me today. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Today, what I want to preach on here is out of Romans chapter 11, 29. It says that the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. It's a pretty self-explanatory piece of scripture, but it's got some pretty profound implications if you're a follower of Christ, because what that means, in essence, is that God's path for you is set. He's already decided what he's going to use you for. He equipped you with certain gifts and talents, and you're going to be used for his glory in your time here. It's really just a question of whether or not you fall in line and you're obedient to that call and it's comfortable, or you're disobedient and it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable. But in my experience, and when I look back at scripture, God's going to do what he's going to do. And if he needs to make it uncomfortable for you, he will do that. Now, if you look back at the people in the Old Testament, Jonah was told to go to Nineveh, and he disrespected that call and went the other direction, and it became incredibly uncomfortable. But eventually, he ended up in Nineveh because God had people that he was going to reach through Jonah in Nineveh. So he had to get there, whether he wanted to or not. Moses was called to lead the people, and he said, I don't think I'm the right person because I don't speak well. So he balked at the calling. But ultimately, God put him out there on that path and did what he did through Moses. Now, we're not Jonah, we're not Moses, we're not prophets. The scriptures are set, but God's still using people today in the same sense that he did thousands of years ago. And he still has a purpose for you and for me. And we know this because we look at verses like Romans 8:28, and it says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So this makes sense from that perspective, that if he's going to use you and use me for a purpose, then we have to fall in line, because there's certain things that he's going to do through you and through me that have to happen in order for these other things to happen. If all things are going to work together for his purpose and his calling, then we all have to submit to his will in one way or another. And we could get into discussions about free will and divine influence and all that, but the one thing that I have found that I wanted to share in this micro sermon is that when I have not willingly and openly listened to God's calling, it becomes very uncomfortable very quick. God kind of gets my attention. And as I was kind of doing through this, I was thinking about back when I used to play football in high school, and really any athletics. If you walk out to a practice field and you fall in line and you're working hard and you're dialed in and you're focused, it's not very hard for the coach to coach you because you're ready to go. But if you show up one day and your head's not on right and you're just kind of like drifting through, my experience has been that's when the coach gets a little bit upset, right? We used to do what's called team reminders. If we weren't willingly doing what the coach wanted us to do, he would gently remind us of the way that we need to act on the practice field. And so, silly analogy about something earthly, but when you're listening to the God who created everything, the God that's in control, he's got plans, and we don't understand what those plans are. So he's going to tell us, you're going to fall in line, you're going to do what I'm going to tell you to do. The call and the gifts and the talent, the path, it's all irrevocable because it's all part of a plan. And it's an incredible blessing as believers that we can fall into that and be a part of God's plan. But I guess my point here in the 2 cents in this sermon is it's a question of comfort on our end in receiving that plan and that purpose. We can willingly go into that, like the athlete that shows up for practice with his game face on, ready to go and ready to learn and ready to grow. Or we can grudgingly and in a bitter sense kind of like back into it and let God push us. But the God that created everything, that's in control. There's verses in the Old Testament talk about fearing God, and people in today's world, they don't really talk about fearing God. I have a very healthy fear of God because I know the power and the awesomeness of God. And if he's calling me to do something and he wants me to walk down that path, it's in my best interest to go out and fall in line and do it than wait for him to push and motivate and tell me to do something. I was called by God a couple weeks ago to have a conversation with somebody, and I didn't want to do it. I was kind of leaving place, getting ready to go home. The kids were tired. And I've never heard God's voice audibly. I don't know that I ever will, but I know the presence of God, and sometimes he gets my attention. And he wanted me to have a chat with this guy who I didn't know. And I tried to walk away. I got about 40 steps away from this guy. I looked at Jenny and said, I'll be right back. I gotta go talk to this guy. Don't know why. And she saw it in my eyes. She knew something was going on, but it got really uncomfortable really quick. And I guarantee if I'd have kept walking or got in my car and started driving, it would have got more uncomfortable because he wanted me to have this conversation. He wanted Jonah to go to Nineveh. He wanted Moses to lead the people. Every prophet, every disciple, he had a path and a plan that was preset, and we are called to walk according to his purpose and to fall in line and to be disciplined and respect the call that's put in front of us. So again, it's a question of whether it's going to be comfortable and we're going to do that willingly, or whether God's going to have to, as my old coach says, get us out of our comfort zone, right? I don't know that I ever showed up for practice in my comfort zone, but I got accused an awful lot of being in my comfort zone. I think when you look at God, he's going to do what he's going to do. Is it going to be comfortable, and are you going to be obedient and listen to the call? Or is he going to have to push you and get you out of your comfort zone? The one other thing I wanted to note was, if you don't know what your call is yet, the gifts and the call are irrevocable. But if you don't know what your call is, submit to God and trust in faith that he will answer that call in his time. But if you ask willingly, I think he will grant you that. But as we learned in the book of James, when we ask him for something, we're supposed to ask with confidence and faith, and don't ask with doubt. Don't get tossed to and fro by doubt. Don't let the world and the enemy and the flesh creep into where you're asking God, but you're not really believing in the power behind the God that you're talking to. Ask him, show me, what is my purpose? What is my call? What are my gifts? What are my talents? Maybe he hasn't revealed them to you yet, and that's okay. He's going to do what he's going to do in his time. But if he has, let's go back to that verse in Romans chapter 11:29. The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. Once he stamps you with a task and a purpose and a mission, it is not subjective. We are not open. It's not open to interpretation. He's telling us to do something, and the God that created everything is going to see that through so we can work all things according to his will. So it's an incredible blessing to be called by the creator of the universe to do something. And my 2 cents today, as a follower of Christ, as a pastor, is when you hear that call, even if you don't understand it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you disagree with it, you're a lot better off to go ahead and fall in line, because it's going to go through one way or the other. And we're better aligned when we say, Lord, your will and not mine, right? I don't want to follow my own understanding. I want to lean on you and your understanding and your truth, because I know that you got plans and that your plans are perfect because you're perfect. And I just want to serve you and love you and be with you for whatever time I have here, and then on the flip side when we get to the other side. So that's what I got today. Like I said, it's good to be back. Really appreciate you taking the time. And until next time, God bless, take care, and talk to you soon. Thanks.